This is a meeting.
Not a meeting.
It's not a meeting.
This is
It's a comedy show.
Just had to run an errand for me. I was just doing.
I know.
directing to you too.
You've been doing all sorts of interview, Hazard.
Yeah, it's been fun. I was on another one today, but they were interviewing me, so it was kind of cool about coaching stuff. But this one will be a little bit more lighthearted and giggly.
I came up with a couple of like pretty serious questions, but it'll be all right.
Oh,
All right,
Jesus.
so
Don't bring the room down. Just obvious the Labatt's.
so we are getting ready to go live. It's up and working. So I'll do the usual song and dance intro.
What's the song?
You'll find out. See if you guys can figure it out. So just give me a second.
Is this going to be another one from Conan the Barbarian?
That was really obscure.
All right, well, here we go.
Oh, Buttercup.
Why don't you fill me up? Buttercup, baby, how you let me down? Was this?
Everybody,
Fill me up. Let me down, let me down. I need you more than anyone, darling.
hey, good Wednesday evening, everybody. It is 6:59 p.m. We are 1 minute early. Welcome to Talkin Wrestling. I am Greco Moses Preeves, excuse me. Joined as usual by Mike Foss and John Goodbody, and we have another special treat for you tonight. The one, the only, Brian Hazard. He's not just a wrestling coach. He's not just a teacher. He's an announcer.
Hazard's looking jacked, you know.
He's showing off on Facebook today, showing his
Showing a
lats popping out.
In the trapezius.
He's like
My
in
wife-
the side poses.
Yeah, my wife was like, "Really, do that again?" And then,
Ooh.
and then she left. So
She left. She bailed out.
yeah,
He's like, all right, I've had enough of this.
done.
Welcome, Coach Hazard, man. Good to have you on.
Awesome to be here. Hey, can I start with something really quick? It's
Sure.
well overdue.
Sure.
So last year, we had a winner chicken dinner. Mike Foss from New Kent High School was the Virginia Coach of the Year
Oh,
by
thank
the
you.
National Wrestling Coach Association. But what he didn't know, and I don't know if that's probably backwards on the screen. I don't
No,
have
it looks
the-
good.
It's
No, it's
good.
good.
Oh, it's
For
backwards
realsies.
on my screen for reals. And what he didn't know was after much lobbying from our region, he got a nice plaque for this one. He was also the Section 2, which is Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, and maybe Pennsylvania. The
Oh.
Section 2 Coach of the Year.
Oh my goodness.
So I've had this sitting in my car because every time I go to an event, I expect you to be there. But typically, like at Escape the Rock and at the Beast, you don't go. You stay home. And I didn't
Isn't that ironic?
trust Shoop to take it.
Going to
'Cause-
the King William Cavalier duels.
Yeah.
I deserve those two just for that.
Yeah, you do.
Taking a
Yeah.
B team there.
That was great. But
Thank you very
congratulations.
much. That's
And I'll get
above
it to
and
you.
beyond.
I'll get it to you as soon as I can. But it's well deserved. It's been sitting in a really safe place to get to you. I didn't want to mail it because when you mail stuff, kind of like Old Dominion, when you mail stuff,
Oh my
everything gets
gosh.
broken.
Broken. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's
I saw that social media.
Bubble wrap. You got
post.
there's plenty of it.
Yeah, it's not
They're
a hard
making
thing.
it. The Chinese are making it. You know.
Oh,
They
boy.
make everything.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go. So, Coach Hazard, wow, this is man. You and I go back a long way. Believe it or not, fellas. Ryan and I have known each other since the old AAU days.
Did y'all wrestle?
No, he was bigger than me.
I was bigger. Even back when the Arthur Ashe Center did the section tournament and the zones back in the day, your mom and dad were officiating.
Yep.
I wrestled John or Russ Hughes the first round of every tournament I ever wrestled, and I scored one takedown one time.
Man, I would get your boy Litley.
Yeah, you would.
Man, he was a little beast master. This guy was like about 2 or 3 inches shorter than me and about 4 inches wider.
Oh, wow.
And he could
Like
throw.
a fire plug.
He could throw, and he was flexible. He was good.
He was good. Yeah, he was tough. We had some battles, and then Jody Staler would come up from the beach, and some of us from PA would come down. Mark Eckenrode. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, he had like his move. He's from Dover, boss.
Okay.
If he caught you in a front headlock, you were either going to get pinned or choked out or both. And
York County had good wrestling then in York County, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, Kevin McCleary was like the big club coach there, and one of my great Greco coaches. But yeah, Eckenrode's standing front headlock. He called it the whoop-de-doo. And you would get choked. Like he knocked me unconscious more times.
I put this back in the office.
How does that work? Like AAU Section 2? Like, I mean, obviously we do a lot more like USA Wrestling stuff, and then we talk about more USA Wrestling on this podcast.
But there wasn't the delineation then as much. And AAU did an awesome job, and they did events. They had different zones around the country.
Yeah.
And we were it would go, it was at Easton a couple times.
Yep.
It was at Stroudsburg a couple times. It was in Souderton one time. And then it was in Richmond a couple times.
It used to be like what MAWA is, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Association. That was all AAU.
Yeah.
That was like Eastern Pennsylvania, Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland.
Yeah.
And Region 1 was kind of like New England. Region 2 was kind of like Mid-Atlantic and down to North Carolina. Yeah. And then all you had to do was you would have to go to like a tournament, like a qualifier tournament, qualify for your state tournament, MAWAs.
Yeah.
And then just go to regions and you qualify for nationals. Grand nationals were like in Indianapolis.
That place was awesome.
Yes.
That was a good place.
The Hoosier Dome one year, and then like where the
Marketplace.
Yeah, that's when I weighed in for one of my teammates. I will not name his name. But we
You shadies. Unbelievable.
Freestyle was
Things they were doing in PA. Unbelievable.
We had a 90 pounder. We had a 95 pounder. I was wrestling 100. We had a 105 and a 110. So, yeah, those of us in the middle, we got the nice end. We didn't have to make weight.
I wrestled a 100-pound midget in 3rd grade. That was my weight class and age group. 100-pound midget. 3rd grade. Way to boost my self-esteem, Virginia and USA Wrestling.
So Brian, let's go back in time. How did you get started in wrestling?
So my dad wrestled. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was a JUCO All-American at Keystone Junior College. Wrestled for Larry Fornicola, and wrestled there 2 years, and then he wrestled for William & Mary. Qualified for nationals 1 year, but he came and he coached at Warwick High School for 2 years, and he could make more being a laborer in construction than he could being a teacher back then in Newport News. So he came up here where we grew up, and when I was 5, my best friend in 1st grade, Alan Hoskin, said, "You want to wrestle?" And my dad was like, "No chance." And then I begged and I begged and I begged and begged. And he said, and he just wanted to, I think, appease my mom to say no chance, but he was giggling and pants were shrinking a little bit. But so he coached me from the time I was 6 until I was, and he was our club coach until I was 20, because he had our club at Mason too. So
did you compete right away when you started at that young?
I did. And my first 2 years, I think I won 1 match, but I had no idea. Like, I would walk off the mat and, hey, did I win, Dad? And he'd say, no. And I'd be, oh, darn. And then I think he realized one day I realized what it was to win or lose. And that's when he got me competing a little bit more and did some training. But we played baseball, we ran track, played soccer, played football. We did, he allowed me to do everything. So
what's it like coaching at your alma mater?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of what I don't know any different.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 1991. I went to Mason 2 miles up the road for 5 years. And then when I was 22, I took the job at Robinson and been there ever since. So I think it's cool to have some really good institutional knowledge. I think, I know I said something today to somebody, I know where all the skeletons are hidden. We've kind of, I started practicing at Robinson when I was 5 years old. So it's really the only place that I know anything about. And it's a weird world. My wife and I bought my parents' house when they moved out. And so I sleep in my parents' bedroom, which is weird. Yeah. Well, I didn't say it. Yeah, it's weird. But so, it being local is a good thing. But at the same time, there are times when I wish I had been an assistant for a couple of years and done something else, but I didn't.
Kind of walked into it.
I mean, that's fun though, seeing like the program, like whether it's growing or developing or building, like you got to see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, our school will be 50 years old next year, and
awesome.
There's only been three coaches. So in those, Coach Epperly was there for 22. Hillbold was there for 5, and he was 21, 5, and then I've been there 24. So
that's something like you would see like in Jersey or in Pennsylvania, like, hometown guy, comes back and takes over the program and he's there. I mean, you don't really see like even teaching, like, you don't really see like a lot of teachers staying at the same school for more than, I mean, I'm starting my 13th year and that's like, it's crazy. It's like I'm the old man, Yeah,
Robinson's one of those places where we have over 30 alumni teaching there.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
The average length of time that people stay is 15 years plus. I mean, it's a great school. It's a great place. Definitely changing. Definitely demographics are changing all over Northern Virginia, but it's still, it's still kind of the boilerplate. I think for Fairfax County and the kind of the house on a hill.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
Fortunate. And it's 7 through 12. So we have our middle school right in the building.
Secondary school. Like Hayfield's like that also, right?
Yeah, there's 3, Hayfield, Lake Braddock, and us.
I'm actually just cleaning and stuff. I'm not really.
So it's a good time. But again, I think if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't do it much different, but I would love to have been an assistant for 2 or 3 years just to figure out what the heck I was doing.
I've been in New Kent as an assistant for 10 years. I mean, I love it. Like
The guy that's there, at the head coach, he just won't step down. What a butthole.
I started out, 10 years as a head coach at 3 different schools. And then when I came down to Richmond and became an assistant, it was like the best thing ever.
the best job, man.
Yeah.
I gotta worry about all the paperwork.
Well, actually, it's quite the opposite. Like, we all have our own little roles and responsibilities. Each of the 3 head coaches at St. Chris, Frank Kiefer, John Gordon, Ross Tomer. Actually, Ross has been the best about paperwork and stuff like that. But
don't forget David Long and Pete Schaefer.
Well, that was before I got there.
Okay.
I'm talking
Pete
about
Schaefer is a good guy.
Pete's
Pete
great.
Schaefer was a hell of a coach.
And Dave Long lives down there. He's an attorney, and I know what you're saying, but I'm just giving you hell. But Dave Long wrestled with me in high school. He used to wrestle Bobby Truby all the time.
Okay.
We were growing up. But he was there for a bunch of years before he got his law degree at WNL.
Right. Blake Taylor was there for a while. He's an alum. But Frank and John, paperwork, forget about it. It's like if I didn't step up and take care of that, we would not have weigh-in sheets. And Ross has gotten really good about like initially, like when he took over as head coach, he was like, "You do the paperwork, I don't do this." And as we've evolved as a staff, he's actually really picked up how to do the weigh-in sheets and all that stuff. And because we tend to split our squad up, so like he's going to need a weigh-in sheet. So instead of me having to print out like 4 copies like 3 days in advance, like he's got it down really well. And Squires, I mean, he was a head coach at Forge for a year, so he's like I always say, like the 3 of us make like the perfect head coach. We all have our roles and responsibilities, and I'm happy being like a supporting cast member. It's after 10 years of being the guy who gets yelled at by administration and all that for the stupid things that I do, it's nice to be able to step back.
When?
I don't believe that, not one bit.
Considering I got banned, like when Josh Wine was a freshman, I got banned from coaching the postseason.
That was Twitchy Prebish, though.
Sophomore year, yeah, it was bad.
Twitchy Prebish was a different breed.
He was.
So you've been coaching and teaching forever. How did this announcing stuff come about?
Work study in college.
Really?
Yeah, so I had a work study with the athletic ticket office, and the women's volleyball announcer bailed one day, and he never got his job back in 3 years. So my sophomore year, I started doing that. I started doing soccer and women's lacrosse when they had that, when they started that, and then when I graduated, I did wrestling there, and then that was just kind of like local stuff. I did some University of Maryland, and then I started doing American with Mark Cody and Pat Pavlizio, and so Pat was the assistant for Mark before he went to Binghamton, and they were going to an event up in New York.
Was it a journeyman event?
Yeah, so Pat hooked me up. Pat and Mark hooked me up with Frank Pavlizio, and I started doing events there, and then did the Eastern Region and the Mat Jam with the ACC, and my dad and I did that, and the SoCon and the CAA together, and then it's just kind of gone from there. And honestly, it's kind of a lucky thing that I never pissed off Ken Berger or Jason Bryant, because now when they have stuff to do, Ken says, hey, let's get Brian involved. And Jason says, let's get Brian here. And so, I can play a little second fiddle at those things. I can be a front guy. But I don't think I'm overly prideful about having to be the guy. Kind of right time, right place at the right time. And try to build relationships and not piss too many people off anymore. I don't do it great, but.
How do you balance it out with, like, obviously, you're running a program, being the head coach of Robinson, traveling during the season. Do you take a lot of events during season, or do you just
from the third week in November all the way till March? I don't do any announcing unless it's just too good to be true and we're not competing that weekend. Or a couple years ago, I drove up and back to Binghamton to do the Penn State Binghamton match on the radio because they paid me a good amount of money. And
how far was that drive? Like 6, 7?
It was forever.
Yeah.
Straight up 81.
Straight up 81, right in Binghamton. But for the most part, I don't do anything during season. I think that's important. But I got a wife and kids who I was gone. Besides this year, where I've done none. I'm usually gone 42 weekends a year, either coaching or announcing, and so they've been pretty good about being single parents and children of a single mom. And then when I do come home and I yell at them, they're like, "You're not allowed to yell at me. Who's this idiot? Who's this gray-haired guy?" So, but yeah, it's definitely been a balance, and I've also had assistant coaches, kind of like what you were talking about. I mean, who have been loyal for like Doug Fisher and I were together for 12 years.
Yeah.
My head assistant now, my JV coach, Drew Foster's been with me for 17. Brian Amos was with me. He was there for 15 years. Sam Smith's been with me for 18 years. Justin DiNicola, and they've all been really good wrestlers who I've trusted. Steve Wilcox, who's in the Hall of Fame, he was with me for 19 years until he retired. Well, I didn't even bring up Rick because Rick was with me for 21 years before he passed.
Yeah.
And Rick and I hated each other for 11 years, our first 11 years. And then he became like a dad to my kids. And we were together and thick as thieves. And, I dealt with his snoring at night in hotel rooms and his same stories. But you know what? He was.
When Brett headlocked Hudson Taylor in the ACC finals.
The best story ever. We went to Beast and we're sitting at a restaurant and Rick sits down and Swink and Perch and Black and all the coaches from Forge are sitting at the table with us. We're having a pizza, and Rick gives me the,
Matt Jones story's coming.
Matt pinned, I believe, a wrestler from Colonial Forge in the state finals. Is that true? And Bill looked at him and didn't say anything. And Mark was like, "F you, Jones," and it got a little bit pitchy, a little chippy for a little bit. But you just chalked it up to you loved the man for who he was.
Yeah.
Brent took me out back when I was in schoolboy freestyle and Greco states back in the day.
Did he?
I mean, took me out back. I got wrecked.
Where's Brent now?
I scored in freestyle and not even came close in Greco. It was ugly.
He's in Charleston, South Carolina, working for the government, crushing it. And then Matt and Wes moved in. They all live together down there. So all the Jones boys are in Charleston.
That's awesome.
They're having a good time.
That's great.
Brent's down to like 195 pounds. He's lean and working hard.
Yeah.
Got a haircut with a line and everything.
I'm disappointed, that I know that he had aspirations after college with freestyle that he didn't pursue it except for that one cycle.
Yeah.
Would have liked to have seen him go into Greco because
He had some Greco stuff, man.
Yeah.
He was great, and it's funny if you ask Robbie Smith, I've seen them together, and Robbie will tell Brent, "You're the reason I went to Greco."
Yeah.
Because he would just beat Robbie's apple.
I was in the corner a lot in Fargo with Brent. Nobody really wanted to sit next to Rick.
Yeah.
Or I had the camera, and I would purposely shake the camera so when Rick would watch the film, he'd like, "You need to hold the camera steady." I'm like, I'm doing this on purpose, Rick.
Prebish, I tell you, you've got to keep this camera still.
Bounce the camera too much.
And I think the bottom line is as a coaching staff, you just got to have. It takes an army of us. You got to have all your volunteers, your JV coaches, the guys that just go to the Thursday night JV stuff and volunteer their time, and
you have Thursday JV matches up there.
What's that?
Do you have Thursday JV matches?
We do. We used to only do Thursdays, and now we'll do some Mondays. We'll do Thursdays, and because we do so few duels anymore, we do some Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And then they'll put together 7 teams on 2 mats, and they'll bring the army of people, and the kids will get 1 match or 2 matches. We do ours on 6 mats. We bring in teams, and the kids get 5 matches in their 3 hours. So it's kind of illegal.
Thursday night matches. That's some high quality wrestling, I got to tell you.
Down in our area, that one team that wasn't on the list, everybody sends you their rosters and you match everybody up. One team that was not on the list will decide to show up, and then and you got to get them matches because you don't want to tell them that they got to go home. That's no.
At this point, we just say, okay, all 103 and 112 come, and then we match them up. All 12 or 19s come. We match them up. We send them out.
Old
and
school.
At a certain point, and then some of them will go 1-1-1. Some of them will go 1-2-2.
Yeah, mix it up too.
And it's not quite the same, but I'm always amazed at how they're like, that's the most tiring thing I've ever done. I see you wrestled for 3 minutes. Come on, man. And, so how do you guys do it? You have a pretty good sized team. Do you guys do at St. Louis or at New Kent, do you do 2 practices or 1?
You go first, Pretty.
No, we
have a big room.
We've got so much space that we could have a 60-person roster and be okay with it, so we can run 1 practice. Ideally, our middle school kids, their practice is their last period of the day, and we would love for them to use that period as a study period and then come to the varsity practice. So they're getting, we don't have a system per se, but we do, there are things that we're going to do. And we would love for our middle school kids to start picking that stuff up in 7th grade, instead of having to play catch up in 9th grade. So, it's an evolving process.
We have a developmental practice, which is our middle school and developmental group, developmental guys, first year guys or guys that are just kind of learning the sport. And they go right after school while Coach Foss like has a little study hall going on, and then Coach Foss will take them to the weight room or on a run or whatever they got to do. And then they switch the, developmental guys, middle school guys. They get a little lift in or a little bit of workout in, then they do some studying, and then they go home, get on the activity bus. And then our next group will come in the wrestling room. But I mean, we have to do it that way because our mat space isn't. We don't have the biggest mat space, and we want to keep our middle school coach in the room too. Yeah. Like we have a pretty good middle school coach. We want to keep him around. And if he used to go down to the elementary school and run practice, but then he wouldn't get up to the varsity practice till like 5:30.
There's a lot of negatives to the going down because you got to roll out the mats, roll them back up. Yep. And then like they have like an after school program that you split the gym with, and they're yelling, and it's elementary. So we try to keep them in the one wrestling spot.
Yeah.
But it's tough for the varsity kids or the higher level kids that have to go second. That's not.
They do complain.
They do not like it, and that's
why do we have to go right after school? Why do we have to go late?
Yeah. We do an hour and a half right after school with our novice group, and then we do 2.5 with our advanced group, and we do the same thing, study hall or lift during that time, and it's good because our young kids, an hour and a half is, and we have 2 or 3 coaches in there, but they don't need any more than that. Because when we had smaller teams, we would run one practice and we would lose a ton of kids because they would their head would explode.
Yeah.
And you can cater more to the levels of kids, and kids get more out of the workouts and more out of the technique or whatever you're breaking down that day, and definitely
individual attention and stuff like that.
We also we try to with not just like with all of our kids, whether they're a starter or not, is that they talk to the coaches about like who their coaches, like who they feel most comfortable with. And then we work with them individually throughout the season. Like if it means, I stay after for an hour, or I come in an hour before they go to school. We'll do some small group stuff and things like that. And I've worked with a couple of guys, and it shows those younger guys that like, hey, our coaches actually care about us. Cause like a lot of programs, you guys, we're all high level programs. There are other high level programs where if you're not one of the studs, you're in a corner and nobody talks to you ever, and I don't think that's good for development. So,
it's not good for anything.
No, it's not, and what we preach to our kids, like, hey, look, one of you younger guys might have to step in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
If so-and-so is hurt, you got to be ready. So everybody has the same expectation, and it makes the kids feel like that they're really part of it, and that's what I love about our program is that everybody is an equal,
I tell you, I was telling this story earlier today, but I learned from West Virginia years ago. They do senior speeches at the end of the year. So I have our seniors give a speech at the end of the year to the team at our banquet. And I'm always amazed, and we have big senior classes, 15 some kids. I'm always amazed at the amount of kids who say, I just love to be a part of the team. I really didn't even necessarily want to start and wrestle a lot, but I love being at practice. I love being a part of something cool. And those are the kids, honestly, that give more afterwards. They give time, money. They always want to rep the program. They have pride in what they did. Mm-hmm. And, if I've seen a lot of college coaches who couldn't tell me their 30th kid on their team. They couldn't tell me anything about them.
Yeah. And
they don't feel a part of it. And those kids are as important or more because they're the ones who get their butts kicked every day for nothing.
And that's why Paul and I are trying to put together our banquet for this year. That way our seniors have that moment, and we honor them with like a little senior plaque, and they give speeches and stuff like that. And it's good to kind of get all the guys together and stuff. And, it's good for the younger guys to see that too. Coach Foss is still working on trying to put our banquet together.
It'll happen. We just got to wait till we're in phase 3 up at New Kent just to make sure.
We'll probably have all the guys over for and the parents over for like a cookout, and
we're not allowed to do that in Fairfax County. No, because what happens if someone drinks? What happens if the family gets a ticket?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to monitor it. So we have to do it in a park or somewhere or in the school. So we're kind of the same way.
we used to do
Are you
it.
allowed to go to a restaurant? Like we have a restaurant we go to. And,
We did one year, and I got my tallywhacker smacked a little bit for that. So they'd rather do it at the school or at a public Fairfax County park.
oh, okay.
Definitely the school. Like I know at Massaponax, we always did it at the school, and either like they did like a whole big like group for winter sports. Like at St. Chris, they do an athletics banquet for the whole school at the end of the year, which is pretty cool. But we've actually had our own wrestling banquet, and both are cool. It's like we give out the awards to as part of the group, and I like to talk those guys up to the rest of the crowd, and it's I don't know, it's good memories of like every single kid, and we're in this business not just to win wrestling matches and produce great wrestlers, but to develop young men and women, so.
Peebush, next time you guys do that banquet at St. Chris, make sure you invite Coach Foss and I so we can boo you.
I'm sure Gatomer would be thrilled to have us there.
So the athletics banquet, right? It's basically like the seniors and their parents and like whatever kid that's getting an award. It's a really good. It's a nice meal, and honestly, like I do absolutely nothing. I put on a shirt and coat and tie, and I sit there. I eat the food. Then when they give out the awards, I'm honestly like I'm on my phone texting, and because it like. And when Gordon was the AD, the athletics banquet, I mean, I love John Gordon. I love him to death. But the banquet would go on. Like everyone would put in like $3 or $4, and you would have to give them a time of when we were ending. And it was always like whoever was closest or on the spot would get the money. It was like $100. Like all the coaches are putting in money. And John would go on for like 2.5, like almost 3 hours. And before,
Be proud of your Saints gear, guys. Be proud.
Good job getting those Saints gear, fellas. And
Did he make you crack backs during the?
Oh my God! This was also before like the dining hall was redone and had better air conditioning. So it's like the end of May. It's hot as crap out. We've eaten a heavy meal and we're just sitting there just sweating. Like 3 hours. So
We need to go back in the video where Pribish said, I literally do nothing. And you need to take that small little thing and just put it on loop. I literally do nothing. I literally do nothing.
Like make it a meme.
Hey, as I remember a couple years ago at Escape the Rock where your van like window busted out.
It's the greatest thing
I
ever.
just do it.
Oh my God. No, we rented these county vehicles, and Rick Jones was driving the vehicle, and he shut the door. He didn't slam it, and the whole side window, Tyler, you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
The whole window just shattered. So that was right at the beginning of Easy Pass. We tape up the window, and then I got charged a ton of money for the tolls because he couldn't get the tolls out to roll down the window, so he just drove through them, not even thinking. Yeah, and that was the ice storm too, and it was so stinking cold that we were driving up the Rock Way or whatever, and then just zipping back down.
The driver's seat,
Yeah, I was supposed to drive home that from Escape the Rock, drive the St. Chris bus, and I pull out of the parking lot and try to make a left turn, and I hit the patch of ice and just slide. And Jatomer's like, stop, you're not driving. Okay, cool. I'm good with that.
Is that the year we called Shoop like an hour after he left and said, you need to get back here right away. They are calling for you. They need you at the head table
What did you
immediately.
guys do? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Dude, you need to get back. You need to get back here, Shoop.
You guys break him mentally. It's so funny.
Because that's hard to do,
It's
actually.
fun. So, I had well, let me go to I had a question. Shit. And I swore. So you have your own unique style when you're announcing. It's a little bit different than like a Sandy Stevens or a Kenny Berger. What makes your style unique? And I'm talking about like when you're a journeyman, you're not at the head table.
No, and I think people like it. I always, anywhere I go, I have to have a wireless mic. the fact that I've sat here for however long we've sat, I don't sit very well.
No, you don't.
I have a bit of the attention deficit disorder. And so I have a lap, or I have a tablet, and I have my wireless mic, and I'm mobile. And I'll go to the tables. I have my tablet. I'm not quite as knowledgeable as Jason because I'm not a savant. But I can look it up really quickly on my tablet. I talk about who the wrestlers are. I typically in my head know where the big matchups are going to be, and I'm mobile as much as possible. And, kind of have a look at what's going on. And people like it. Actually, 3 years ago at the Division III tournament, Jason and I were doing, anytime that they would do a review, I would walk to the mat and talk about what was happening with the review. And it got to be pretty cool. And then they did it at D1s. And then last year in Kazakhstan, the jury asked us if we would do the same thing, to put an earpiece in, walk over and talk about what they were deliberating on during the reviews in freestyle Greco and women's. So I thought that it's pretty cool, and it's a little bit of a niche thing that I do. That
you get to look at what they're watching when they're,
yes,
nice,
yeah. And so and typically, because there's so many different languages and so many different cultures doing the officiating, they either talk in French or English, and it's typically English and fairly broken, but still English.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, and we didn't do it this year, but they wanted to put it in for the Olympics in the future because they knew that we could do it. They said, we want everyone to know that we're not crooked, is pretty much what they told us. Because, like in that Aliyev Romanov match last year, that could have gone either way. It was a crazy scramble. People were saying that the jury was crooked when I don't necessarily think they were. I think it was one of those calls that's just brutal to make. Yeah. And they want people to understand that they're doing their best. And
interpretation's tough in those situations too. So
yeah, brutal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the NCAA tournament, it's pretty cool. They turn the screens, and so only like 3 people can look at it, and the fans behind them are trying to see what's going on. And then they'll bring me in, and the one of the officials will look at me and say, challenging the takedown, this is what we're seeing. And so I said, okay, on mat number 2, the challenge is they're looking for the takedown on the edge. And then that way, because they're not doing video screens, people can understand it. It's been a pretty cool little deal. It's added a little thing for me to get jobs. But as soon as my hips started to hurt a little bit more, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it much anymore.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Be walking over with my walker.
I don't want to hear it. You're like
creeps will crack your back, rub out your hip flexion.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
I don't want to hear it, man. Get on my level, dude. Get on my level.
That's short. I can't get on that level. Little.
So what has been this is like we asked Bryant the same question. 2-part question. What has been your favorite event to work? And what is the worst event you've ever worked?
Gosh, there's a whole bunch of awesome events. I would have to say, and I don't remember what Jason said. I don't know if I got that far because his knowledge was way too crazy for mine. And I got nervous that I was going to have to talk as much as he did about random things that I didn't know. But that first NCAA tournament at Madison Square Garden was awesome. As an announcer, that or doing the broadcast when I announced Sajalayev and Snyder won, when Snyder won the world championships, and I was on the Olympic broadcast for the Olympic Channel broadcast. That was pretty amazing.
I think JB went with like Helen Maroulis winning the Olympics, right? I think that's what he said.
Did he go with the best words you can ever say?
The Olympic Games is what he said.
The best words that you could ever say.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the United States of America.
And he was trying.
And I was trying.
Yeah.
But I've videoed him doing that I got to do, he actually brought me to Kazakhstan, which was awesome. He said 9 days, I won't be able to do it. He goes, but he did all the finals because he's the main guy. Yeah. But I got to do a bunch of the quarters and semis. and then when I wasn't doing the broadcast for freestyle for Greco women's freestyle, I videoed. I was the BB, as I like to call it, the B-boy. And then probably the worst event that I've ever announced. There's two. The first one was the first Brute Adidas Nationals in Kansas City, Missouri, where they thought they were going to have like 250 kids, and they ended up having like 1,000 some kids.
Ooh.
And they were doing these bullpens, and nobody knew what the heck was going on. And people were screaming at us. We were like 6 hours late. Nobody knew what mat was what. It was a show. It got better after that. Then it was the Brute Nationals. Then it was the Adidas Nationals because they split. And then the second one, it was a great event. They did a good job producing it. Was the Eastern region. I think the second to last year, they did the Eastern region, and it was at Gardner Webb. And the event was awesome. But in the consolation semis, it got down to the last match, and it was like a heavyweight triple overtime, awful. And Kenny Berger taught me, like they do in USA Wrestling, like they do in the World Championships, put on some music. And so I put on some music, real quiet. I had it on the whole tournament. But because there were 3 people in the stands, it was a little bit louder than, wasn't overbearing. And Bob was working for the NCAA then, and he came down and he grabbed me and he said, "Turn off your music." And within like a month, the NCAA said no more music at events. And so Pat Tossi and people at NWCA still say I was the traveling road show, and it's my fault that they can't do production music anymore at events. So
what was the song that was playing?
I think it was just, I don't even think there was lyrics. I think it was like background thunder music, like NASCAR music. It was really low. It wasn't overbearing. There was none of the 7 deadly words, right? It was just music, because it was the worst freaking match you've ever seen of 2 wrestlers who probably had 2 years of wrestling experience wrestling to move on to the consolation finals when there's 6 teams. It was awful.
I actually have a Bob Buck story that's kind of embarrassing. So I don't know, John, Mike, if you know, Bob Bubb was the head coach at Clarion for forever. From like the late 60s all the way to like the 90s. And in Pennsylvania, we would do our what became Fargo. We would do our junior national training camp at Clarion. And so we go to Clarion and use their room and all that. And one of our coaches conned me into going up so they had their wrestling camps going on. They were selling Clarion gear. And one of our coaches conned me into going up to whoever was selling the gear to ask them if they had any Clarion Sucks t-shirts. And it just so happened at that time, the person working the gear sales was Bob Bubb.
Oh man.
Yeah. And I was probably a sophomore or junior, and they were actually looking at me, and he took me aside because he knew me, and he was like, "You do realize we were considering looking at you to come here and wrestle. That's done now. Now we're done." I'm like, okay. I'm so embarrassed. And my coach is in the corner just laughing. I'm like, "You guys suck.
You suck.
You suck." So
I ended up at the Ville.
Yeah.
What was that, Floss?
I just mentioned, and then he ended up at the Ville.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. One's a little bit, one's serious just about wrestling. The other one's a little bit funner. How do you have a relationship? Like, how's the relationship with all the club coaches up there, like in Northern Virginia? Because your kids go everywhere too.
Yeah, I mean, we do 2 to 3 nights a week at Robinson, but maybe I'm different. I think kids should have an experience to go to several. I don't think every kid should have the same technique. I don't want a bunch of robots. I like them to go. I'd love them to go to you guys. I'd love to send them, St. Chris, Predator, we have the one over Tech Squad. We have Nova Wrestling Club. We have a couple of others. So I have a pretty good relationship with the majority of the coaches.
Yeah.
Some of the club coaches are a little overbearing, I think. Sometimes, I think some high school coaches, they only want their kids and so I'll tell you, like, a team that doesn't do it, they at the Viking Woodbridge Wrestling Club with Hunsberger and Ty Nepp, they do an awesome job, man. They're crushing their club.
Yes.
They're open arms to people to come in and work out as long as you have a USA card and do it the right way. I'll never understand the coaches who say you have to do it my way. You can only be at my club for this. Now, if you're paying a bunch of money to go, I get it, but at the same time, some of my best friends and some people, I mean, I've known Prebish, right? Not Prebish, but Prebish. I've known Rob Prebish since I was 11 years old. And I got to know guys like him and Kerry Colott and Kurt McHenry. We competed against each other, and then we went to Russia together, and then he was in my wedding. I mean, then we were Jody Staler. I would spend summers at his house. He taught me how to do backflips and handstands and shotgun beers on the beach.
Nice.
So not really, but maybe. But
nudge.
Yeah, but I wrestling is such an awesome sport to build relationships that I think we're stupid if we try and pigeonhole all our kids into our little want. And so I like my kids to go to as many different clubs as possible. Any club person who's charging a bunch of money for kids to be there wants their kids to do a certain thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't agree with that.
And Bill Swink has been, I don't know if he's still watching, but he has been watching and commenting. He and I have had conversations about the club, and, the other coaches in Stafford County and Spotsylvania County and Lower Prince William didn't want their kids to go to Bill's club, even though Bill's club was the best in the area with the best wrestlers, the best coaches, because these guys were all worried that Bill was going to steal them. And Bill was anything but that, honestly. He just wanted kids to get better. He's like, look, he's like, during those 3 or 4 months during the season, we're gonna fight each other out. But like, if you want to get better, you have to find the best coaches, and that might not necessarily be at your high school. So
Well, and if the kid walks in and eyes open and go, "Oh my God, this is how it's supposed to be," maybe I should go there. We had that happen to us several times.
Yeah,
I wasn't out there, and you guys aren't out there saying, "Come to New Kent, come to St. Chris." Yeah. Well, you guys can do that, but you don't do it. Or come to Robinson, but they go, "Oh, this coach is going to care about me. This coach is going to teach me. This coach is going to love me unconditionally, regardless if I'm his wrestler or not." And I can't tell you, and you guys probably have the same thing in the off season or during the season. A kid from another school beats my kid and comes over and goes, "Hey, thanks a lot, coach, for teaching me." Yeah. And I'm like, "Hey, that's awesome. It sucks, but it's great."
Yeah.
So
I get it. Like, when our chief rival in private school is Benedictine, and their previous head coach would get upset if any of their kids would come over and train with us. Even though, these are kids that have been coming over to our club for a number of years. It was like going on record saying, "No, you can't go over there." There's a big rivalry, and we've had some of their kids come over and work out with us. They're our club kids, and the Slate twins, for example, they both have been coming over to our club for 2 or 3 years. They're our kids, even though they beat us in their weight classes at states and all that. I was one of the first ones to go over to them, like, "Hey man, great match. Like, you're looking really good. I'm proud of you." And when Gabe was a prep All-American as a freshman at 103, and all the stuff that he's been throughout his career, to pull it together at National Preps his senior year and be an All-American at 82. I'm so proud of that kid because he stuck with it.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm so proud because, Sam, that his coaches never gave him, the previous coach never gave him the time of day, that Sam was just kind of there. And Sam was a raw talent. He started coming over to us and realized, like, wow, this is what happens when people care about you. Like, they want you to get better. Like, we took him to Cleveland or to Akron for UWW cadets. We were there in Fargo. And yeah, we want to beat them during the season. Don't get me wrong, but they're my kids. Logan Cohen, the 220 pounder, he trained with us for years, Just because they go to a different school doesn't change my feelings unless they become an a-hole. And that does happen.
It happens.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, the kids don't become the a-hole. The people in their ear.
Yes.
Same thing with parents. I mean, you have these great kids
Yes.
who don't start or don't do well, and the parents have to find somebody to blame.
Yeah.
And the kids are spending the majority of time with them. They're going to think in their ear, oh, this guy did me wrong. That's not
I've had that. I had that as a head coach, and
Yeah.
it's, I think we all coach for the right reasons, it ain't, I had a great career. I did, and I had fun with it. I'm having so much more fun and I'm learning so much more now as a coach than ever before, and I'm learning a lot about myself as a teacher and as a human being. And I think that's, Donald Motley, and Oscar Smith, what he's doing with his program, with his kids, it's so much more than just wrestling.
I bought a warm-up gang shirt yesterday.
I did
Oh,
too.
where do you buy them actually?
Just text him. I said, should I do cash on delivery? And he said, man, that's a 90s thing. You need to pay me now. So I did a Venmo thing with him, and I bought a shirt yesterday. I'm going to wear that thing like warm-up day.
I'm going to get the yeller one.
I did. That's what I got.
Yeah, because I don't have a lot of yeller.
It's gold.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. Robinson, right? Well, what he does with his kids and what he's done to elevate that program and elevate those kids to the next level.
Just elevate the community, man. He's
the community. Yeah. Like what he was doing in Norfolk, was it yesterday or over the weekend?
Yeah.
It's so much more than just wrestling. It's life. And I've got nothing but respect for that and love for that. Because that's for the right stuff.
There are some coaches who did not want to see that, buddy.
Yeah.
And my dad was announcing the 6A tournament this year, and he came up to him and he told him in his ear, he goes, man, I'm so proud of you. And Donald jumped up and chest bumped him and said, that's right. And, I said the same thing. I've said from the beginning, he was my roommate in Fargo a couple years ago, and he'll pick anybody's brain.
Yeah.
He might not go about it the way that some people do, but he talks to those kids in a real way. Those kids respect him.
Sure.
They're reverent to him as a figure in their life.
Mhm.
And the jumps that they made in 3 years, physically, emotionally, spiritually, was sensational. And I have nothing but good things to say about it.
Oh yeah.
I've enjoyed the times that I've spent with his kids. Like it might have been like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. A bunch of his kids weren't on the same flight to Fargo as he was. So he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, dude, they can stay at my place. We'll go work out at St. Chris. So I had his heavyweight, Freddie, who was like almost 300.
Big daddy. Oh, yeah.
So this
Freddie
is when
was
I
big.
still had my little Mitsubishi Eclipse. So I've got Freddie and I've got like 3 or 4 others in my tiny little Eclipse. Like, so it was just the funniest thing. We're rolling down Monument Avenue and these guys, they hadn't seen the monuments and all that. So we were talking about that, and just like these guys, like the eyes were just like huge seeing all this stuff. And it was just like the coolest bonding experience with those guys. We had so much fun in that night, and it's just, we need more of that, not just in just in general. We need just more of that.
Well, like I said earlier, I got to go overseas. Chad Bailey and I, we went to Cuba together. Kurt McHenry and I and a bunch of other guys went to Russia together. those are some of my best memories of
yeah.
learning about people that weren't from my community,
Absolutely.
weren't complete Fairfax County white bread.
Yeah.
You know, parents are all lawyers and doctors. These are kids who, and granted, Kurt's dad is really honestly invented the internet. He's not Al Gore.
Yeah.
Every URL when the internet came out in 1992 or 93 or whatever those years had to go through his company. He had to certify every URL in the internet. It's pretty crazy stuff, but he got in at the right time. Brilliant. And Kurt's done great things too. But those type of relationships that I have now, my dad, my mom worked with a guy, Wade Hughes, who was the Howard head coach.
And he was at George Washington.
George Washington had the most takedowns, third in the NCAA, runner-up in the Olympic trials in 88 to
Smith?
No, not he was at 14 and a half, 23 and a half. Who was below Smith? 25 and a half. Who was below Smith? Not Barry Davis. Was it Barry Davis in 88?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he lost to Barry Davis in the NCAAs and in the Olympic trials. But I stayed with him in north or southwest DC, and he took me around. And you know, my dad was smart. He said, "You're not going to be around cultural people. Let's get you around people who are different than you, because at the end of the day, you're not always going to have it kind of this easy." And so
my first 2 years at Bishop McNamara, you know, again, growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, you know, I learned a lot about the real world in those 2 years, you know, when just from my wrestlers and their experiences. And again, you know, where I am at Meadowbrook, I'm learning a lot about the experiences of my kids, and they know that I love what they're doing, you know, and I am genuinely invested in their lives. And it's benefited me as a human being because I've learned a lot about myself and becoming, you know, a real person, you know, and we don't
I'm a real boy.
I am. I haven't grown up, but you know,
kind of like Mannheim, Pennsylvania, right, Foss?
We have two Mannheim, Pennsylvania champions right here.
That's right.
I know we talk about all the time though as educators and coaches and stuff. And I was talking to our middle school coach about her.
Holy!
Oh my goodness!
True pewter.
That is epic. Check out the actual Baron.
Derb, did Derb hand him that, boss?
I think Derb is the model for the Baron. He dresses up as a Baron. They take a picture of him and they model it after that.
1988. I was
awesome.
a junior. Yeah.
Oh
that is awesome.
That tournament was so tough in the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, man, yes.
I won this in overtime against a guy from Shikellamy that was like a foot taller than me, and he hit a John Smith low single. Yeah, you're not saying much. Shut up, man.
You didn't wrestle in it, did you, Hazard? You just took a team.
No, I just took a team there. So Doug Fisher from Bald Eagle area was we coached together for 12 years, and he was the JV or the middle school coach at Bald Eagle right when he left Penn State. He came down here and we coached together for our first 12 years of coaching. We were both 22, 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so we tried every year to get into Mannheim, and every year it was full. And then one year, either October or November, a team backed out, and Derb called me. He's like, "Hey, Brian Hazard, do you think that you would want to bring your team?" And I was like, "Man, we went." And man, it was those first. How many years did we go? We went for 11 years. The first 8 years we went, that tournament was so tough.
Yep.
It was almost free. We had to pay for one hotel room and vans because they gave one hotel room to the coaches. All the kids stayed in host families.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
And and that's another one. Our kids stayed with Mennonite families, Amish families. The families, I think they probably still talk to them today. They were still sending cards back and forth forever. And our kids never got any of that. So and they would the host families would sit in our section and cheer for our kids, even though they're Mannheim people, because isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to support these kids.
Such a good tournament.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
It's too bad.
I'm glad that we went to it. Starting my junior year in high school, because I stayed with the same host family, same 2 years.
Yeah,
and they were excited. They actually came to the finals both years, and it was not a big tournament, like 12 teams, but it was freaking like
every single one of them was just solid.
So my junior year, going into my junior year, so this was the summer after I took third at juniors, after the year that I won cadets and beat Colot, I was seeded 7th. 12. 7.
Yeah, they still did that.
Friend?
What's that?
Is that when you beat Ocker?
No, I beat Ocker my senior year.
Okay.
And then the next year, this guy Ocker goes out and wins AAA states.
Yeah, I thought Ocker was like a 52-pounder. He was smaller.
Not big. Yeah, he was a 19-pounder.
Was he really?
He won it at 35. 35, I think.
Okay, I always thought he was like a 52-pounder. I never knew he was a smaller guy.
So I should have been class of 91, but.
What year did you wrestle Grable?
Grable, I think, was my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah, I beat
These are all. He's 2-0 against guys that I hung out with in high school.
Do you ever call them and laugh at them?
You're welcome.
I see him still.
One of your buddies went over Steinbacher, though.
Oh God.
Steinbacher.
So,
hey guys, here's a little bit of fun question though. Then previous we'll let it finish up. You were talking about how you started off announcing other sports.
Yeah.
Do you have any other sports as like passions? Like what football team do you follow? Do you follow any soccer?
I will watch any sport that's on TV. I am not a stat file. I couldn't tell you who the coaches are and who the greatest athletes are, but I'll stay up all night and watch. I remember when Alex was born in 2001, we came home from the hospital and I watched a 3-day cricket tournament, and I love cricket now. Like I'll watch anything. Now that cornhole's on, I watch it. But I'm a Redskins fan. I'm a big Caps. I'm a big DC area fan. But I've always been, and I'm not a fair weather. I mean, we used to go to the Cap Center to watch the Capitals in the purple seats down low when nobody went. I love the Caps. So I'm
a Rangers fan. I'm sorry that we suck, and
that's okay.
You haven't won a cup since '94, and
well, for years, you beat us up, and so that our two good years have been great. I love the Redskins. They're horrible. I hate their ownership. I hate going to games, but I just cannot be a non-fair.
I think they got a good guy there now.
I think so. No, I think he's going to be great, but you can't get past the owner.
Yeah, the owner is a tool.
I was a huge Baltimore Orioles fan. My dad would take me to Memorial Stadium in Baltimore, and now I've become I'd probably go to, it depends on the year, between 3 and 12 games a year for the Nationals. So I'll even go watch a soccer game. I'll even go watch a United game. But I like it. I tell you, announcing wise, because it was my first thing, I love to announce women's volleyball. I think it's a fun sport to announce. I think the sport is very cool. And high school football has been an awesome sport to announce. And, I kind of created my own a little niche thing. I do music. I have my little clips things, and I don't do nicknames or anything. And I try not to be overly obnoxious, but because now with the NFHS, you can't be a homer anymore or you get penalties. But we have certain things that we do, and the fans do some callbacks, with first down stuff and with touchdown stuff. So, we have a scoreboard now that we started a thing a couple years ago where I went to the Booster Club and I got all of our booster sponsors. And so now I have a list up on my wall. Usually it's only every score. So, field goal or touchdown, I say that's the, two dudes plumbers touchdown of the game. Or at the end of the game, if we don't have any first down, turnover, or anything, I rep our sponsors, and they really like that. And then I do some recognition of service members and first responders. But I'm just a sports guy. I love them.
Yeah.
Not like Jason in basketball. I listened to this whole thing about Pocosin basketball, and I was a little disgusted with him about it when he loved basketball so much growing up. I couldn't understand that.
Yeah, he is an interesting character. So.
What about you, good buddy?
I'm a Rangers fan for hockey. I'm all New York's fan. I was born in New Jersey, so
Okay.
Giants fan, Rangers fan, Knicks fan, Yankees, and then I follow a German soccer club called Borussia Dortmund.
Okay.
So
I always say that I'm in a distant. I always say he's my cousin, but I don't think he is, for Eden Hazard, for Belgium and Barcelona now. But I don't think we're related. But I follow him just because he's got a really awesome name.
Yes. Very good name.
Yeah. But so I think we should all be sports fans. I mean, the problem that I have right now, kind of looking at the whole ODU thing, and I signed early to go to William and Mary, got a scholarship there. My dad went there. That's all I'd ever wanted to do, and they dropped the program. Pete Schaefer would have been my coach. What's that?
We would have been teammates.
I know we were going to go.
And I was almost teammates with Chris Steinbacher too at Central Connecticut.
At Central Con, yeah. And Scott Schluchter was going to go to William & Mary, Dave Long, Khalil Abdul-Malik. Like, we were going to have they had good teams. Billy Pickus did a great job. But, I think one of the big problems that wrestling has is we always say, but we're so different. But we're so different. You can't, it's apples and oranges. And then when a team gets dropped, well, why didn't you drop that team? Or I think until we start working together and trying to do that, I think sports are in trouble right now.
I think they are too.
I think the Virginia High School League and a lot of school systems, they just want to get rid of sports because they're a headache. They forget that your most important things in your life. I don't remember many of my English classes, but I can tell you football games, women's soccer games, field hockey games that we went to and heckled and screamed. And I mean, those were some of my favorite times. But I think they discount that experience now because everybody has to have a letter, whether it's IEP or number 504 or, everybody has to have a label. Every money goes into different things. And I think a lot of it should. I mean, I have students who are special ed and special needs and I'll bust my ass for them. But at the end of the day, we need to put stock into kids enjoying their experience.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's it's unfortunately that it a lot of times it comes down to the almighty dollar, and public school, we're already so underfunded as it is, when in a community like at Meadowbrook where we're already at a disadvantage financially,
housing taxes.
Yeah, we need opportunity for these kids to enjoy their high school experience, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in an activity. We don't have activity buses because they cost too much money.
Right.
And I think like my students would get so much more out of school and being prepared for life if they had other things that they could do other than go home and play video games
and have success in.
Yeah.
They don't give kids a chance to be successful, and they're like you said, disadvantaged stuff in the classroom. They don't have access to tutors or whatever it might be. But then at the end of the day, they also don't give them a chance to be successful in something that they've never done before. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I talk to my kids a lot about, hey, it's okay to fail.
Right.
If you want to master something, you're going to have to fail. So I don't expect you to be perfect. We strive for perfection, and I'll help you fix those mistakes that you made, but it's not something against you. And like my kids, when I've been trying to break this barrier, is when the chips are down, they just quit. They just give up. And we just got to stop giving up and really just working hard to understand that it's part of the whole situation. That when you come out on the other side of it, you're going to realize that you did something pretty cool. Anyway,
Definitely.
off the soapbox.
You
So,
freaking you all freaking liberals.
yeah,
Here we go.
you guys got
You're
anything
like
else? for-
liberal like land up there, like the
Oh, we're the reason Virginia is the way it is right now.
yeah.
It's crazy.
You aren't Virginia. You guys are Southern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know. It's
If you guys are Southern Pennsylvania, you'd be doing all right.
yeah.
You ain't in the South. Nah, Northern Virginia. The South don't start till you cross the Rappahannock.
That's right.
I learned that real quick. Anyway,
Them Nova people don't know what they're doing.
them Nova people, man, they so liberal with them thoughts and stuff and giving kids all kinds of stuff, man. We can't do that down here, man. I tell you that much.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's about it. What I got. You guys got anything else?
I'm good.
Nothing. It was great to have you.
Yeah, Hazard,
Anytime, guys.
always a pleasure, man. Just you're one of the guys in Virginia that makes this whole thing worthwhile.
Thank you.
And we appreciate having you around and doing what you do. And you've got a great family. You know, I've spent some time with Tyler. You know, he's a funny kid.
He's a
Your
good boy.
youngest son, though, he is a lot bigger than you. I'll tell you that much.
No, he's my middle. My youngest is
Oh,
my
he's the
size.
middle?
Yeah, Alex is my middle. He's he might, I don't know. He doesn't wear shoes a lot. He wears shorts everywhere he goes. He might be a good body. He's got a pretty good beard.
Yeah, there you go.
Mickey.
So on that note, thanks for coming on. Hey, I'm gonna end with I don't know. We'll do some Braveheart.
Braveheart.
Nice.
Graveyard.
I
The
appreciate
battle
it.
of Sterling Bridge.
I got one more question for you though before we get off live.
All right.
After we get off live.
Got it.
Thanks for stopping in tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Talking Wrestling. We'll come back at some point in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. Brian Hazard, always a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Woo!